Sketches. So it's your boy Kevin here. I'm with my boy Kris. How you doing, Kris?
Hey man, how you doing? What's up?
Okay. Is that your Schwarzenegger pumping iron impression, or
Going to bump you up.
we gotta do pumping iron sometime? That movie's the shit. That movie's hilarious. This is
I
like
can't recall that movie.
the documentary that they did on Arnold. You know,
Oh,
when he's training for like Mr. Olympia, whatever the hell,
oh
Mr.
yeah.
Universe or whatever. It's just
So you're talking
hilarious.
about
He's
like
so
an
funny.
SNL version or something that came out of that. I don't remember that. The Hans and Franz
This is
movie?
probably funnier than SNL, honestly. He's he's hilarious in it, and he's like everywhere. I'm coming everywhere. He's like in the weight room. I'm coming in the bedroom. I'm coming.
I'm sure he did a lot of that.
It's hilarious.
Not the cowman.
Yeah, you gotta watch it if you haven't,
Ah,
and we should talk about it sometime. Yeah, 2 seconds in, and we're talking about Arnold coming. Okay. So the movie that we're gonna do tonight, me and Kris, we were planning on a different movie because we wanted to stick to the Women's History Month theme. So we want to pick female directors. So we were thinking Pet Cemetery, the original, which is directed by Mary Lambert, and she did a great job with that. It's a great horror film, but kind of watching it back, it just felt like it's a little too dated, kind of, watching it back, I was like, it's a little too old, I know you're a big Stephen King guy, and you're a big horror guy in general. So I wanted to like emphasize, like pick something in the horror genre. Usually when we do ours, we're gonna do a lot of horror and a lot of action. Um, and you're a big Stephen King guy, like I said, but watching that back, I was just like, it was like I was kind of clutching at straws on what I could talk about with the film.
came out
So
in
then
'87.
no, that was like 89 or something like that.
So you were 12 years old.
Me? No, I was like 4. I was like
God.
4 when it came out.
Well, that's probably why it scared the
But
hell
I
out of
saw
you.
it. I mean, yeah, it did. Yeah, like
4-year-olds should not be
I
watching
saw it.
Pet
I think I
Cemetery.
saw it. What's that?
I said 4-year-olds should not be watching Pet Cemetery. This is
No, they
very bad
shouldn't. But
daycare.
I I always seem to find the horror, or the horror found me somehow. I saw it on TV or something a year or two later, and and I would see it kind of growing up, and on cable. And I remember Pet Cemetery 2 came out, and that had Eddie Furlong from Terminator 2, and he was the shit. So we're like, oh, we gotta watch that, And then by that time, I was like 9 or 10 when that movie came out. But we're not doing Pet Cemetery. I decided to kind of transition at the 11th hour to another female-directed horror movie, a little more recent, a little more making the rounds of late, and that movie is The Substance, starring Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, directed by Coralie Fargeat, the French director. This is actually her second film. She did another film before this called Revenge, which I haven't seen, but it seemed like she was able to blow up with this second film that she did, The Substance, and was nominated for a lot of awards recently. I think Demi was robbed. Should have got she should have got the Oscar if nothing else, just because she's been around for so long. Maybe it wasn't the greatest performance the whole year, but it's like she's 60. Give it to
Who
her
won the
already.
Oscar? Who won? Who
It
was the
was
winner
that
of the Oscar?
Mikey Madison, who's in that Honora. I know you haven't seen that, right?
The stripper. Okay.
Yeah, she's a stripper, and she gets with some Russian guy or whatever. Did you watch it?
No.
You did?
Seen
Oh,
yet.
okay. I
It's on
mean,
my
I am
Netflix list.
interested in seeing it. I mean, but I guess we'll get to that. So we're gonna talk The Substance. Um, it's the most recent movie, I guess, that we're doing so far. But I feel like it's topical. Um, I would suggest if you haven't seen the movie, watch it first before listening to this because there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this because we're going to go over the whole movie pretty much. Um, so you saw it like a few months ago, right? What'd you think of it?
Um, very disturbing, very poignant. Deals with a lot of issues that we see in Hollywood today. Um, it's kind of about addiction in a way, and about being the
Yeah,
perfect person, being the beautiful person in the world, and um, it's a horror movie that it's kind of flipped because the person doing all the terrifying is the person is the victim is the terrifier, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. I see what you're
She
saying.
she
Yeah,
does it to herself. There's no one else doing this to her. She's creating her own horror, so to speak. So that's kind of a unique
yeah, exactly.
angle. So yeah, I
Yeah,
thought it was
exactly.
great. I thought it was a great movie. I don't know if I'd give it an Oscar, but if there was horror movie Oscars, yeah, I would. It would win hands down. There was a lot of good movies this year, but it was probably the best one this year. Thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they should do a horror movie Oscars. The Freddies or something.
Creamies.
Yeah, the Jason
The
Award.
Willies.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure they have something like that, but I mean, it's not that big like the Oscars.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like you're saying, I mean, the plot that you're saying, like the horror comes from herself.
Yes.
Is it's because this is considered part of the body horror subgenre of horror, which I actually really like body horror. The whole thing is that with body horror is that you're like being betrayed by your own body, and instead of the horror, usually in horror is like you're being attacked by something from the outside, something from the outside is coming to you, but in body horror, it comes from within you, and that's really scary because you can't escape that. You can't escape yourself.
Can you
So,
think of another
you
body
can
horror
say that the
movie?
godfather of body horror. What's that?
I was. Can you name another body horror movie for your millions of listeners?
Well, I was gonna say like kind of the godfather of body horror is David Cronenberg. So pretty much like most of his movies from late '70s to the '80s were body horror. So he did Shivers, which with the other alternate title of Shivers is It Came From Within, which is I remember seeing him in an interview. He said, "Oh, that's a great title because yeah, instead of like it came from outer space or whatever, it came from outside. Like it comes from within in his movies. So he did Shivers, The Brood, Scanners, Videodrome, and I would say the perfect example of this is also The Fly that he did.
Yes.
Um, Great film. Hope we talk about it sometime. And it's cool that that was actually produced by Mel Brooks because he kind of when he produced, he kind of liked to produce a little more serious movies, like kind of darker movies instead of the ones he directed. Like he also produced Elephant Man because he
Wow.
was a really big fan of that story. And so obviously he had David Lynch direct that, and on the fly he gets another David Cronenberg to reinterpret that '50s classic B movie, I guess. But I almost feel like, in a way, the '50s one is kind of scarier than his version because you see like the end of that '50s version, the wife comes home and she sees this like man body in a suit, and then she turns around, it's this big ass hairy fucking fly. That's fucking scary, bro. And imagine seeing that in the '50s. Seeing that on the big screen, this big ass hairy ass fly face looking at you, that's pretty damn scary. Um, yeah. So just yeah, I mean, yeah, David Cronenberg, he's kind of considered the godfather of body horror. And then another movie that kind of copied him was like Altered States with
Hmm. Yeah.
William Hurt, right? You've seen that. Can you think of any other body horror from back then or past few years or anything?
Maybe like werewolf. Do werewolves qualify in this picture if they got bit and they don't understand what happened, and all of a sudden their arms and teeth start popping out of their head? No.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of was that crossed my mind, but I don't know. Maybe maybe it doesn't qualify because it's like too straightforward. It's like I guess they don't know what's happening, but once they become the wolf, they're like, okay, I'm a wolf. You know what I'm saying? Like they know what they are. In these other movies, they don't
Right.
know what the hell's going on.
You
They
know
don't know what they're
what's
becoming.
around the
They don't
corner.
know. Yeah, like they don't know what the hell their body's turning into. So I mean, I think that's more of the horrific part of it. At least if you're becoming a wolf, you're becoming a wolf. You know what I'm saying? In this movie, you don't know what the hell she really becomes. Um, so I mean, yeah, I saw like last year. I saw like some previews for this, like, and I saw that Mubi because Mubi is this streaming company that does like a lot of art house. It shows art house movies on there, and I saw that they were like putting this together, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, I know them as a streamer, but now they're like getting into the production game, which I thought that was cool. I'm like, I want to be part of that. How can I get on the movie director roster here? And I saw that Demi Moore was going to be in it, which is cool because like I haven't seen her in a long time. And then also Margaret Qualley, who's a new young actress. Yeah, I really liked her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino film. She was great in that. So I was like, oh, these two together. And then I was like kind of speculating what the story was. I was like, I guess she's like a younger version of her or something. And it's like, I could kind of sense there was some like body horror going on, but I wasn't really sure. And then when it finally dropped, I didn't see it right away. Like I was hearing a lot of buzz about it though. So then I did see it on Mubi, and I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. They really went for it in this movie. There was no half stepping here. And yeah, Demi Moore. I mean, this was a good comeback for her. Like I said, I mean, it would have been nice to see her win the Oscar. I'm not saying she necessarily was the best actress, but it would have been cool to see her win it. I saw Ghost in the theater when I was a kid. Um, I remember my mom took me. Yeah, I was like 6 or 7 or something like that when that came out, and yeah, I saw that in the theater. And even as a kid, it like kind of scared me, but then it was also like kind of sad. I was like kind of crying in the theater. I was like, this is sad, but it's like, oh shit, it's kind of scary too. like I remember that movie hit like an emotional core with me, even as a kid. Um, so that was a big movie, and then she did like Indecent Proposal and Disclosure and Zin. I know you like that, and GI Jane,
Bodies of work.
and her career kind of tailed off a little bit after that. But she had kids anyways with Bruce Willis, so I guess she had to take some time to do that too. But then Drew Barrymore invited her to do Charlie's Angels too, Full Throttle, and that was like kind of another comeback for her. People were happy to see her again, and then she started dating Ashton Kutcher, and she married Ashton Kutcher, and, and then they got divorced, and the rest is history. But at least she's back on the scene with this film. So yeah, I don't really know much about the director, Coralie Fargeat, but I know that she's French, and this is her second film. But I see that she lists Cronenberg, John Carpenter, David Lynch, Paul Verhoeven, and Michael Haneke as filmmakers who have influenced her, as well as crediting several South Korean filmmakers as stylistic inspiration. So she apparently was motivated by societal pressures on women's bodies and aging. She wrote the screenplay over 2 years, assembling a team to co-produce the film between France, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Used a lot of French crew on this, and I guess principal photography in France lasted 108 days. That's kind of a long time for like an indie movie, but I guess because there was so much, effects to this that they needed to take a while. Um, I feel like 107 of those days, Demi Moore was just lying on the floor. Like, she does a lot of lying on the floor in this. She probably could have got the Oscar for best lying down. They need to invent that award for the guy from Rush Hour 2 as well, who lied down like all day in that film. So we got to go with the cliche Wikipedia description, Kris. So here it goes. On her 50th birthday, Elizabeth Sparkle, a once celebrated but now faded Hollywood film star, is abruptly dismissed from her long-running aerobics TV show by Harvey, the producer, due to her age. Perfect name, too, right, Harvey? Distraught, Elizabeth crashes her car while distracted by a billboard of herself being taken down. At the hospital, a young nurse covertly gives her a flash drive advertising the substance, a black market drug that promises a younger, more beautiful, more perfect version of oneself. So that's the plot. So you start the movie and you see the Mubi logo, and so like, oh, Mubi coming strong on the scene with their little logo. And then you see the next studio logo, which is a working title, which they did some good shit back in the day. I remember they did About a Boy, which I love that movie. I'm a big Hugh Grant guy. And then we finally see the movie, and we see a cracked egg. It's just like an egg without a shell. It's just there, and it's like being injected with this green substance on a blue table or something. And it almost looks like the beginning of Napoleon Dynamite or something, like the little intro, like the with the food titles. It was like kind of weird. And then all of a sudden you see the yolk of the egg like multiply itself. So there's like two eggs just like floating in there, and you're like, oh wow, like, that's pretty interesting. And then we cut to see like a Hollywood Walk of Fame square, and some guys are putting it together and they're working on it. And then we see like the life cycle of a star, basically. Like they make the star, and then we see her like there, like all from this high angle. Like you don't see any other angle, just this overhead angle of it, and it doesn't move at all. And you see just the whole life cycle of it. Like her receiving that star, and over time it gets cracked, it gets shitted on. Guy drops food on it. Homeless people pee on it and stuff like that. Like it's funny because almost seeing that little montage of that, it kind of reminds me of La La Land. There's something about like the cinematography of it. I don't know. Somehow it just had a look, and even like just the editing of, for some reason, which I love that movie, and I know you hate that movie. Um,
Yes, I do. It's a cool montage, and I like that. In the beginning, she's there, and there's spotlights, and everybody say, "We love you," and then people are stopping to get the picture by the star. People say, "Oh, I remember she was great," and as time, you can see the passage of time. People are just walking right by over it. People are dropping shit on the star, and it like just kind of shows the way people kind of fade out in the Hollywood
yeah,
atmosphere
exactly.
after 20, 30 years. It's probably how long it was, and that montage.
Yeah, that was a pretty good montage, and yeah, just the whole life cycle of that.
Hmm.
And then we cut and we see Demi Moore, and so she plays Elizabeth Sparkle, which I almost feel like they should have had a different name. Like I feel like the name was a little too porn actress sounding. You know what I'm saying? Like I wish they kind of chose a better, more subtle type of name. But she's doing like a Jane Fonda, aerobics video, like sweating to the oldies sort of thing, and that's like the only thing she can kind of do nowadays. So the fact that she's doing that means her career's washed up, basically. And she walks out of that, in the hallway trying to get out of there, and people just walk by her and they're like, "Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday," and it kind of shows you that since that's all they're talking about, it shows that that's the only thing she has going on. They're not complimenting her career, not complimenting her show or whatever. It's just happy birthday. Like that's all the compliment you get at this day and age. Just reaching your next year of life is the only compliment that you'll get. Um, and she needs to go to the women's restroom, but it says it's out of order. So she goes into the guys, and then she kind of hides in the stall, and Dennis Quaid comes in, and he's like the head of the production company. He's Harvey, and he's on the phone while he's taking a piss, and she overhears it, and he's basically trashing her like she's an old hag. We need new blood, need some new chicks. And I just realized how I never wanted to see a close up of Dennis Wade's face as he takes a piss. Like I just realized that. I never thought I'd have to see that, but yeah, I see it.
It's not pretty.
And it's funny how he even mentions like, oh, like she won an Oscar back in the day. Like, who cares? That was like 500 years ago. It's funny how he mentions that, and she was Oscar nominated and should have won the Oscar, but didn't. And then that was before Oscar season. I don't think people were expecting this to be like a Oscar worthy film on any aspect, but she was in the running for it. Much has been made about like the colorful orange like production design and stuff like that. How they're saying it's very like Kubrickian, very The Shining, and how the bathroom looks like very shining-y. It's pretty cool production design. It's a little heavy-handed for me. I don't know if I'm just getting older now and everything's like heavy-handed to me, like more subtleties now. I don't know what it is, but either that or just every modern director now just does really heavy-handed shit. You know what I'm saying? They don't like to like let it breathe. Like kind of one of the things that I try to do is I remember I took this theater class, and I'm not a big theater guy, but the teacher said something the first day that really stuck with me this whole time, 20 years later. And he said, you know what? He said, great art conceals art. And he said that, and I was like, he didn't have to explain it, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, that's true. And so what he meant by that is like, you don't have to force shit down people's throats. Like, people get it, and kind of, you know, it's more artistic when people don't even realize that what they're seeing is art. You know what I'm saying? It's more artistic when it surprises you. You know what I'm saying? So I just wish more directors would do that nowadays and kind of lay off all the homages, all the like postmodern references. You know what I'm saying? Tarantino, when he did it, he was really good at it. But I mean, I think people can move on from there. But like a lot of the bright colors and stuff like that, to me, it almost was like Pedro Almodovar-ish, kind of, actually. That's kind of how I saw it. There was a kind of a, Spanish influence to it. That's Mao. He loves sitting on laptops. That's just a cat thing. At least my cats like doing that. And then so we cut and we see them having lunch somewhere. They're having like a power lunch, a Hollywood power lunch or whatever, and we see close-ups of him as he's grotesquely eating shrimp, and it's disgusting. And and I think her showing these close-ups of him is like they're showing how he's really the monster. Like he can do something so mundane like eating, but he's such an asshole and a pig that he's like the real monster of this piece. And he eats a shitload of shrimp. I thought I ate a lot of shrimp. This guy eats.
6 pounds
He's
of
like
shrimp.
Homer Simpson at the seafood all you can eat buffet.
Must have been expensive.
Yeah. Well,
Six
he's a
pounds of
rich guy.
shrimp. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a rich guy, I guess. But it's funny, like the framing of them eating. It almost reminded me of like the shots from like Being John Malkovich. Or did you remember that? Like just like how they're seated and like how the camera angle was reminding me a lot of that. And then we see like this extreme close up of this fly drowning in his glass of water or whatever. It's very detailed. It's a nice little Cronenberg reference, right? Like that's the fly influence on
Yep.
this. And she's driving in her car after that, and she kind of looks over and she sees the billboard of her, and you see these guys just rip it down like with like reckless abandonment. They're just like they just tear it and like right through her face, and she kind of like is like shocked by that, and then all of a sudden you just see this truck from the side of her just ram into her car. That shot reminded me of Whiplash, actually, like when he gets hit in the car trying to go back to that recital after leaving his sticks at the rent-a-car place or whatever the hell. Like, had that same sort of angle. And then somehow she's like totally fine from the accident. They said she just had like a scratch on her, and somehow, I don't know how the hell that happened. Probably should have been dead. She's at the hospital, and she's like kind of depressed there. She's kind of sad, not because of the accident, but just like she finally reflected on her career. She's like, it's over for me. I'm old, and these guys don't want me anymore. And so the doctor's like, okay, well, I'll leave you alone. Like, he kind of doesn't know how to react to her crying. So he kind of leaves her there crying. But then the younger assistant guy, like, creeps up behind her and, like, feels her back or whatever. And she's like, what the hell are you doing here? And he kind of feels her spine. He's like, you're a good candidate or whatever. And she's like, candidate. And then we cut to outside. She's walking around with her yellow coat. And the guy, he slips her a USB drive that says The Substance. And the note says, it changed my life. So she's like, okay, it kind of piques her interest. And she goes outside and she bumps into this old classmate guy. And he's like, oh, like, Elizabeth, wow, you look great. You're the most, I remember me from homeroom, like, you're the most beautiful girl ever. He's really into her, and she kind of likes that because she felt like shit, But it's like compared to normal people, like, she still looks pretty good, So that guy was really, into her, and he's like, oh, why don't we have a drink sometime, And she's like, yeah. He like writes down his number to her on a random piece of paper, and you don't expect her to really call, and I don't think he does either. But she holds on to it, and then we cut to she's at the bar. It's a pretty nice design bar, might I add, and she has like 4 cocktails. Like, you can see like the martini glasses like all stacked up right next to each other, and she's just drinking there alone. And next thing you know, she's puking in the bathroom. She pukes all that up, and she's back at home, and she picks up an old snow globe, and she shakes it, and like when she shakes it, and we see like the snow like move around, and we hear like some crowd or something in that brief moment, and then she just gets pissed off and throws it at the wall. And she's like, okay, what the fuck? So let me call this substance number. So she decides, she calls the substance number, and she says, I want to order this, or whatever. And the guy just like gives her an address. I'm like, okay, so I guess that's where I go or whatever. And then she gets a package in the mail that has a magnetic entrance card, like those hotel keys, the hotel cards to get in. So she gets one of those, and she goes to the address, and it's like really in the hood of LA, compared to where she lives. She lives in like the Hollywood Hills, and she goes to a part of LA that looks like it's from Pulp Fiction or something like that. Like she goes into this really hood area. She has her yellow coat on, which reminds me of the yellow coat from the movie Alice, Sweet Alice, the 70s movie. Did you ever see that with Brooke Shields when she was like 5 or 6 years old or something?
It was like a horror movie, wasn't it? No.
Yeah, they wear like these yellow coats or whatever, kind of reminded me of that. Um, I think Brooke Shields actually could have been good in this too. Actually, like if she did Demi's part, I think that would have been good for her too, because she's around that same age, and just like kind of her backstory, being this kid who was like kind of exploited, and she never really got to shine as an adult, kind of, in any good role. I wonder if this was offered to her at all. I think that would have been really interesting, having Brooke Shields in this. And by the way, the documentary on Hulu on Brooke Shields is hella good. It's really interesting. If you haven't seen that, you need to peep that. And another question that comes to mind is, how the hell does Dean Cain get all this pussy? What the hell? Like, I guess he went out with her in college or something, and then he went out with like Pamela Anderson or something. It's like, how? How is that possible? That's a riddle for Edward Nigma. Um, hence the Batman snuggie that I got on. Um, so she tries the card. She gets to the address, and she tries putting on the card, and it's not working. But then she kind of sees like some little hole, like a little vent thing that she kind of can squeeze through. So she goes through there, and she keeps walking, and then eventually she enters this white room, and it looks very Kubricky, very 2001 Space
Mm-hmm.
Odyssey. And she gets like she finds like she goes to the number like corresponding with the number that they gave her, and she gets like a box of food, and it kind of breaks down like what she's supposed to eat, and when she's supposed to eat, and all these instructions. It's almost like these modern like these Blue Apron food delivery or whatever. It's like, here's your box of food. You make this on Monday. You make this on Tuesday. It's kind of ridiculous. So she's at home, and she looks at herself naked in the mirror. She kind of checks herself out, and she's kind of like, I know you like that part. She kind of, judges her body. It's like you kind of see that in her eyes. She's looking at herself, and she's about to inject the substance, so she like puts the syringe. These are my cat's foods going off. Um, she puts in the syringe, and we see that classic green substance, and it's funny that they called this the substance, because I was, when I heard that, I thought this is almost like The Stuff or whatever. Remember that, the
Mm-hmm.
'80s movie? That's what came to my mind when I heard that, and how they were kind of using this substance. So she's about to shoot that up like heroin, like she has the cord on her her arm, and she falls down on the floor and hits the tile, and that hurts, bro. Like she's like writhing in pain, um, and like she's like naked that whole time, like on the floor, and you know it's pretty brave to be naked like that, especially at this age that she's at. Isn't she brave for being naked, Chris?
I I salute her for her bravery and way dedication to the role. She really gave it 110%.
Yes. It's brave when women get naked, right?
Yes, exactly.
So we have to salute her bravery. And we see her pupils kind of change, dilate, and that's kind of a Kubricky thing, like 2001, also the Space Odyssey. And then her back like opens up, like the slit in her back starts opening up, and it's like Ace Ventura 2, It's Hot in These Rhinos scene. Like I was expecting Jim Carrey to come out of her back or something. But we see that, and it was mimicked on the Oscars with your boy Conan doing that. Yeah, we see she's like dead or whatever, basically, like she's like passed out, and this other being comes out of her body, out of her back, and at the end of it, we see it's uh, Margaret Qualley, and there's like this vortex like type of thing, and that also really reminds me of Kubrick, 2001, like when in the last sort of climax when he's in space, and
Hmm.
kind of Christopher Nolan-ish when he's coming down through the black hole, kind of looks like that kind of vortex trippy thing, and then also kind of like Krzysztof Kieslowski in Three Colors Red, when you see her make the phone call at the beginning, and you see the line, like you see the perspective of the line of the phone line as it goes through France and goes to England or whatever. It has that same sort of vortexy type of look. It's pretty cool. And yeah, we see Margaret Qualley there, and she's naked, and she's kind of looking down, like, wow, what's going on here? Isn't she brave for being naked, Chris?
Very brave, very brave,
Yeah,
extraordinarily
very
brave.
brave. She's a young actress. Just starting out basically. She's Annie McDowell's daughter. Um,
I can see that. See the
yeah,
resemblance.
yeah, yeah. They're both quite striking young women. Um, and yeah, we saw Margaret Qualley in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as I said, and she starts puking out like some of the substance. She's like, ugh, and you see like all this green shit on the floor, and I didn't realize it. So it comes with like the kit comes with like a sew her back up thing, like comes with like these fish hooks that like you can sew her body back up, and so she kind of has to do that afterwards. It's like,
It's
geez,
kind of
like
implied. There's no directions or anything. And there's just implied. Here's a hook. Here's some stitching. Just take care of the back there. That's like a gaping vagina.
I thought I thought it had IKEA like directions on here. Like you see the guy, like the little Swedish like cartoon guy. He's like like inject the heroin, sew up her body. you know? Yeah, and then after she sews her up, she has to like fill her with goo. Like she has to like shoot some goo into her. Um, and now that she's out of her body, she's like doing some yoga, some stretches, um, and she's taking over her nice apartment. And as she's doing the yoga, she kind of sees in the trash like that casting call. It's like a casting call for Elizabeth's replacement. And so she gets like a light bulb moment, like ding, like all right, I'll try out for that. Um, and we see her wearing her yellow coat, like walking to the casting call, but then she stops in the window and she sees like this latex or spandex suit or whatever, and she's like, I gotta have that. And that, it almost reminds me of Saturday Night Fever when he's like strutting in the beginning and then he like passes by the store and he sees the shoe there and he's like kind of twirling with the shoe, which I remember seeing for Saturday Night Fever. That actually wasn't that wasn't him they shot when they did the close up of his foot, because he's like I did the walk obviously. He's like, but when they do the close up of the foot, you see like kind of the foot dancing or whatever. And John Travolta was like, that wasn't me. He's like, you know why? Because I would never do that. He said he didn't like the little dancing in the window. He didn't like that. So she buys that latex spandex suit, and she's there, and these two guys are doing the casting. And when I see that, it reminded me of one of my favorite films of all time by one of my favorite directors of all time, and that's the movie Audition by Takashi Miike.
Mm.
And seeing her there and these two guys running the audition, like that really came to mind. And they're like, okay, well, what's your name? She says, I'm Sue, but she says like I'm Thu, like she has like a lisp or something like that. And then it gets like remixed, and it's like Max Headroom me. It's like on all these screens, like I'm Sue, and it's just like really trippy. And Quaid comes in, and he's like, oh, like this is our new girl. Like he really likes her. He's like really into her, which is no surprise, obviously. Of course, he would like her. So he hires her, but then she kind of makes up this thing like, oh, like I have to take care of my mother who's very sick. Like I have to leave often. And he's like, I don't give a shit. If you got to take care of your sick puppy, like we're gonna make it happen. So he obviously likes her, and then he like um puts out like his cigarette or whatever, and it's like a cool shot. It's like from the POV of the ashtray, like you can see like the ashes in the thing, and it's kind of a cool little shot. And then you see Margaret Qualley. She's teaching the aerobics now. Sue, she's running the show. She's into it, and they kind of made it hipper. Like there's a lot more twerking kind of involved in this now. And then, she goes back and sees the kit again, and it's like she has to switch every 7 days. That's like part of the rules or whatever. Um, but it's just funny because it's like after that, you just see Demi lying the whole damn time. She's lying on the floor like the whole fucking time. She spends like 80% of the movie lying down on the floor naked. And people were saying she deserves an Oscar for that, which, is debatable. I guess she could. It could have been like a lifetime achievement Oscar for Demi there. Best naked lying down award. And then so we see Margaret has to go back inside her, and it just seems really painful. Like, I don't know if this all this shit is worth it. Like I don't know if I would do all this stuff to have to go through this whole process. And we see what's her face? She goes back to the studio. Demi Moore goes back to the studio, and Quaid comes up with like a going away box, kind of like, oh, like here's all your stuff, and we got you this nice little going away present. Like, see you around. They kind of just kick her out, and she's pissed. Like she's like, fuck, like you're kicking me out, and this bitch is taking over now. So she's pissed, and then we kind of just see that life sucks being her now. You know what I mean? Like she has nothing going on. She doesn't have any projects. She's just at home, with nothing much to do. She doesn't have a family. She doesn't have a husband. You know what I'm saying? It's just she's just at home, and it's just kind of it sucks to be her. I mean, compared to Margaret Qualley's life.
Right.
So we see her that she has to re-up on her food matrix. So she gets another Blue Apron substance box, and she turns back into Margaret Qualley. And Margaret Qualley's life is kicking ass. She's dancing, she's drinking Diet Coke, she has her ass in panties, like real like close-ups of it too. Life life is good for her. She's kicking ass. And then we just see poor Demi, her naked ass just lying there, and like it sucks. Yeah. And then we see it's something like Margaret Qualley. She does this like lip biting thing that people have picked on. Like it's like her go-to move. Like if she's in a quandary, she goes like she bites her lip like that's like her thing because she did it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood too. And now I'm seeing memes like, okay, this apparently is good acting now. And it's like 5 pictures of her like biting her lip like that. Um, and she decides to like renovate the apartment, so she's like doing all the stuff, fixing it up, and she's working on it a lot. She's drilling and hammering, and then she gets a knock on the door, and this neighbor guy, he's pissed off. And he's like banging on the door, and then she opens up, and he's like, "Oh, like, what happened to that other lady who lived here?" And she's like, "Oh, she moved." He's like, "Oh, okay, hi, nice to meet you." And she's like, "Were you gonna complain about something?" And then he's like, "Oh, me? No." He's like, he's like, "You're fixing up the place. That's cool." He's like, "I can be helpful." He's like, "I have a big hammer." And I have a sack of tools or whatever. It's like really awkward. But it's pretty funny. And she's kind of like, okay. And she kind of just blows his ass off. And, watching this, watching this back I was like, damn, this is a pretty long movie, actually. It's a lot longer than I remembered. And I don't know if it needed to be that long. But then I was kind of looking at it like, oh, what could they cut out? What could they shave off from this? Maybe they could shave off some of the dancing, show a little bit of it, but not overly. Because we see her doing another new aerobics routine, and it's very pink. She's wearing a lot of pink, and we see Qualley making out with this dude in the apartment. They're totally about to get it on. But then she starts getting a bloody nose, and she starts stumbling around, and she kind of has to like blow him off, and she kind of goes into that bathroom area, and she calls. They tell her like, oh, she didn't switch on the seventh day or whatever, and she's like freaking out or whatever, and then she has to like stab Demi, in the back, and she gets like some blood or something from her, and then she goes back, and this guy is like, they're making out again. He's like feeling on her ass and stuff like that, and he's like starts taking off her like jumpsuit that she has or whatever, and then like all these guts are like starting to come out. It's like pretty gross. And then like right when you see like all these guts about to fall, Demi wakes up and she's like, oh, like what the hell? And so she goes out of the bathroom and she sees like a sticky note there that I guess that guy left who was making out with Sue, and it says like he left his bike there, and Demi sees her hands and they're all like old looking or whatever, like especially her fingers like all fucked up or whatever, and she's like, what the fuck? And she like goes to the bathroom and she's trying to wash it off or whatever, but it's not doing anything. It's still, she just still has this ugly old demon finger, and she calls the guy from the substance company, and she's like, well, like what the hell's going on or whatever, and the guy tells her like, you guys are one and the same, if one is if something's fucked up by one of you guys, it's gonna fuck up the other one or whatever. So like, there's nothing she can do. Like she has to control herself while she's someone else. Like it's like really complex, and we see her vacuuming, Demi. She's vacuuming, and she looks up and sees the billboard, and she sees Sue there, and she watches her on TV. She watches her aerobics routine there, and she's like pissed off, basically. Like she's taken over her life, and then she goes to a diner, and she sees some old guy who has like the same scar that she has or whatever on her hand, and she asks him like, oh, did you follow me here or something? And she recognizes him, like he's really the guy. He was the young assistant guy with the doctor, but it's like his old version now. And she's like, oh shit, like I see, like she kind of sees it like playing out in someone else, and she could kind of like the gravity of it hits her, like how freaky it is. He asks her, he starts like kind of going crazy. He's like, oh, like is he eating away at you? He's like really like egging her on, and then after she leaves the diner, she bumps into the guy with the motorcycle, the guy who was making out with Margaret Qualley, and then he's like pissed off at her. He's like, hey, get the fuck away from me or whatever, and she just sees like the difference, like how much he is attracted to this other version of her, but he sees her and he's like pissed off at her, and so she feels like shit, and then she finds the number of that guy that she went to school with, and so she's like, let me call him and see if he still wants to go out or something. So she calls him, and he's like shocked. He's like, oh, like I didn't think you'd call, like, and he's happy to hear from her, and they agree to go on a date, so that kind of like makes her happy a little bit. And then we see Sue. She's doing the aerobics. She's doing the dancing or whatever, and like something happens, and they ask her like, "Oh, what's going on?" She was like, "Oh, I was just distracted." But then the cameraman said, "Oh, hold on, like I saw something bizarre, or whatever. Like let's look back." And then you see on the big screen, like they have like this close up of her ass, and everyone is watching it. Everyone's looking up, and they're just going frame by frame of her ass, and she's like getting really uncomfortable. She's like, "Can I have my robe or whatever?" And she's like getting really self-conscious, and she's there's like 50 guys looking at her ass on the screen, and she's like, "Oh, get me out of here!" And she kind of walks out, and she goes to the bathroom, and yeah, like that's like horrific. That's like something, I guess, like Hollywood horror, I guess, women being exploited like that, especially, I feel like they wouldn't do that so much now. They're kind of more conscious of having like intimacy coordinators and trying to have as little people on set when they do like sexual type of scenes or whatever, but I know I'm sure there was a time where they were doing stuff like that, and then that's like the horror that they're really trying to show. You know what I'm saying? The exploitative horror of that, the being sexualized, I guess. And so she goes into the bathroom and she's like, she finds a hole in her side or whatever, and she's like, what the hell is this? And she keeps like pulling it out or whatever, and then she pulls it out and it's a chicken drumstick or whatever, and it's like, what the fuck? And then, and then she wakes up and she's at home and she like throws away all this chicken, like she's like, what the fuck or whatever. She calls the substance guys, like saying like, oh, like she's fucking up my life. She's like eating all this chicken. She's eating crap, like all week, and it's fucking up my body and stuff like that. And that guy tells her the same thing, like, like you guys are the same. Like, she does something that affects you, and you can't really control it. I mean, you can try, but I don't know, like. And she kind of got back at her for, like pissing her off, and they're kind of at war with each other without, being in each other's presence. They're kind of fighting each other. And we see Demi, and she's like turning into this old disabled hag. Like, she looks horrible. She's balding. She looks like, Glenn Close with, old man makeup. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but she looks really bad. And she's like trying to straighten her leg in this scene because it's like all twisted or whatever, and she's like fighting to straighten it, and then she does, and you can just hear it crack, like her leg. It's really gruesome. Good sound design though, good stuff. And she's like around the house, and she finally opens that gift that Dennis Quaid gave her, and it's like some French cuisine book or whatever, and she's like, okay, what the hell is this? Like, this is stupid. And then we see Sue. She's being interviewed by some guy who reminds me of Arsenio Hall. And Demi is like making some of the food from the cookbook while she's seeing this interview, and she does a lot of cooking there. And I was watching it. I'm like, this isn't a very good cooking show. Like, like, so this food doesn't look very appetizing to me. And Demi is just kiosked watching this interview. She's like, fuck you. Sue is like trying to be coy, and she's trying to be like, she's like, oh, I'm from a small town that no one's ever heard of in Indiana or whatever. Like, obviously she can't really say where she's from because she's not really from anywhere, And Demi is like, oh, fuck you. Like I'm where you got your talent. I'm where you got your looks or whatever, And so Demi is pissed, and we see her just like bang her head on the floor in the shower. And Margaret Qualley comes back to the apartment, and there's all this food everywhere. There's crap everywhere. It just looks horrible, and she's like pissed off, and she just grabs all the crap and throws it into the bathroom. And she's like I don't want to go back inside you, like, you're disgusting or whatever. And then after that, we see 3 months later, and she's supposed to do this New Year's Eve show, like the next day, like, right after we come back after this 3 months. And it's funny because it's like she's with her boyfriend, I guess, this like model buff guy or whatever, and they're like sleeping in the room, and it's like, I don't know how the hell the boyfriend doesn't realize that she has this like secret chamber in the bathroom or whatever that hides this old hag on the floor dying. Like, I don't get how the hell she can get away with that, but
All the empty
somehow she
tubes and
does.
little caps of vials and things that are in the trash. What the hell is this stuff?
Yeah,
Special
exactly.
diet.
I don't get it, but whatever. So Margaret Qualley calls the substance company asking for more stabilizer. I guess it like stabilizes her, and they told her that she ran out. or whatever. And she's like, what do you mean it ran out? And they're like, oh, it runs out, And she's like, what the fuck? And she's like, I need it because I'm doing this New Year's Eve show tomorrow night. And they tell her, well, it's like, it has to regenerate. It might take a day or two to regenerate. And she's like, I can't do that or whatever. And she's like, shit. And then we see like her saggy ass, like her ass like starts to like get like droopy or whatever in that moment. Her boyfriend's knocking on the door, so we see her ass, and all of a sudden they show his ass, and I'm like, do we really need to see his ass?
Juxtaposition. Yes, we
Yeah, I
did. We
was
had to
like,
see that contrast. It was important.
okay,
Youth
thanks.
versus drabby ass.
Yeah, so we
Yes.
see her saggy ass, and we see his like buff ass, and he's like banging on the door, like, hey, what the hell, what's going on? He's like, I gotta take a piss, just let me take a piss or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you see her like turning into Demi, and she's like, ah! She's like, fuck you, get out of here. And he's like, oh shit, like he's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And he just runs out naked, like, because somehow he doesn't know what happened to his girlfriend, but something happened there. And she falls down, and she's just like a fucked up creature at this point. She's just like, some thing, some blob creature. And Demi calls the substance company and tells them she wants to stop the program. And she goes into this little locker and picks up a final syringe, and she drags Qualley and stabs her in the heart with it. And so that whole section is very Pulp Fiction-esque, like how she like holds the needle, and then like the slow zoom like into Qualley is like the slow zoom into Uma Thurman there. It's very Pulp Fiction-y. And she looks over and she sees these flowers that say, break a leg, they're going to love you. But she stabs her right then and there, and she injects all of it into her heart. And then all of a sudden, after she sees that note, she's like, oh shit. She's like, she regrets stabbing her, and she's like, damn it. She's like trying to CPR her back to life. She's like, come on, and her nose just keeps bleeding or whatever. And she basically like IVs like some of her own blood and into the syringe and like injects it into her heart, into Margaret Qualley's heart, and it wakes her up. Similar to Pulp Fiction, she wakes up and she's puking blood. And then that's the thing, they see each other for the first time, like living. You know what I'm saying? It was either one was asleep and one was awake, but finally we see them looking at each other. One's an old hag, one's a hot chick, and they're just kind of like, oh, like what the hell? Qualley just attacks Demi, and Demi hits her over the head with a vase, and she chases her and runs to the bathroom, and she kicks the door open, and Qualley kicks her in the face, and they look at each other in the mirror, and you're not kind of sure what's gonna happen. Like maybe they're like, oh, like you almost think for a second, like, oh, like I understand you now, like we get each other, but that doesn't happen. Qualley just bashes Demi's face into the mirror, just like, and like,
Fucks
you're
her
like,
up
crap,
big
like,
time.
yeah, like it's almost like in Irreversible, the French movie, when the guy finds the guy who raped Monica Bellucci, and he just hammers him with this like fire extinguisher, just like, and you just see like his bone like deteriorating. It reminded me of that. But somehow Demi doesn't die right at that moment, even though she's beating the shit out of. And Qualley's kicking, like she's on the ground, and Margaret Qualley's just kicking the shit out of her, and just blood is just flying everywhere. And and she feels sad, like seeing her like dead on the ground, basically. Like she kicks her to the point of death, pretty much, and she sees her dying there. And then Margaret Qualley looks up at the billboard, and she sees her there, and there's like a real sadness there. And we see Margaret Qualley at the studio with everybody. It's the day of the show, and Quaid is excited. And she she struts around like coughing a shitload in the bathroom, and she spits out a tooth and with the root, so it's like nice and long and nasty, you know. And she smiles, and we see like the gap in her teeth in the mirror, you know, and she's like, okay, I feel like my other tooth kind of getting loose, and she pulls out her other front tooth, and she smiles like she can't believe this shit, you know. And I love the shot of her like smiling in the mirror with her like gap teeth missing. I almost feel like that would be like the Japanese poster of the movie. It would be like the substance, you know, like starring Demi Moru, you know, like that would be the alternate Japanese cover. That would be a cool poster. And then she comes out of the dressing room or whatever, and Quaid wants to introduce her to all these like shareholders or whatever, and it's just these old white men. And he has this like cool orange suit that he's wearing there. It's pretty cool. And he's like, "Oh, like, are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, why wouldn't that be okay?" And he's like, well, she doesn't say anything. She's just like nodding, and he's like, "Oh, well, you're not smiling or whatever." And then she does this like smile with no teeth, and he's like, "There you go." He's like, "Pretty girls should always smile." And that's what he says, and I mean, and that's like something women hate nowadays. They hate hearing that. Um, so, and it's funny because these old guys, they're kind of like the old guys in Babylon, the Damien Chazelle movie that I really liked from a few years ago. They're kind of like that. Like they remind me of that, and like after that point, like we see her in her dressing room, and like her ear like falls off or whatever, and it's like it reminds me a lot of Reservoir Dogs. Like when you see her ear pop off, it's like exactly the same like sort of makeup that they kind of use for that. It's pretty cool. It's another nice little Tarantino reference there. And then like her fingernail comes off or whatever, and that's where it's like full on like Cronenberg there, you know. And like she kind of runs out like scared, and it's like it reminds me of like Requiem for a Dream, like the way the camera is like on her body. I'm not sure how they do that. It's like a harness or something that they put where like the camera is like really up close, and we see it on her body. I mean, it also like they use that like in Talladega Nights when he runs out of like the burning NASCAR, and he's like, "Oh, he's like Tom Cruise, help me!" Whatever. It's like the same sort of technique. And she runs home to her apartment, and she injects herself, and she's like, "Oh, please, like let there be a better version of myself when I inject this shit in me," you know. So she injects herself, and then it does that weird little fire thing. I don't know. I guess that's supposed to symbolize this sort of transformation or whatever. So we
Metastasis.
see that, and we see through the point of view of her eyes, and it's really like disoriented. The point of view of what has come out of her, and it's kind of like, okay, what are we gonna see? And we hear like a lot of grunting or whatever. Or like whatever this is, it can't be very good. You know, we're seeing hearing a lot of grunting, and she kind of gets a glimpse of herself in the mirror, and she's like highly deformed, like really deformed, you know. And we see Demi's like face sticking out of her. It's all very disturbing. And then we see like the casting guys talking to her, like it's an audition, you know. And then we see on screen the title card Monstro Elisa Sue, like you know, like a hybrid of both of them, right? Um, and it's funny. I like how she still tries to put on the dress, like you know, like let me at least put on the dress, you know. Let me try at the very least, you know.
No one will notice this.
Yeah, like you would think, like no, I'll just stay home and you know ride this out, you know, let them wonder what happened to me. But no, she's like, I need to go. Like they both decide to like strut their stuff at this New Year's Eve thing. So she puts on a smiley picture of Demi as her like mask or whatever, and she puts a little lipstick on it. It's funny, like she walks in and she imagines like all the people see her, and like they don't say anything with her body. They're like, hey, hey, and it all feels like really surreal. Like it's like very Roman Polanski ish or like Brian De Palma esque or whatever. But then that wasn't real. She walks in, there's like no one there. Whatever. It's just a nice little like fantasy that wasn't true. Um, and they turn out the lights on the stage for like the main event, and she takes the stage, and it's funny because the girls around her are naked. Or I thought this was like supposed to be on TV or something like that. I think the girls around her are topless at the very least.
It's
And
gonna match.
she walks to the center of the stage, and the girls around her are like, "What the hell's going on? Like, who is that? And why does she look like that?" And she's trying to talk to the crowd, but she's kind of like mumbling. And then all of a sudden, the mask comes off, and the crowd is just stunned. They're like, oh, and then all of a sudden you see like a part of her like throwing up, like a part of her body is throwing up or whatever, and you're just like, okay, what the hell is that? And then you see like a nipple coming out, and you're like, oh god, no, whatever. And she like throws up a breast or something like that. It's pretty gross. And so yeah, the crowd is grossed out. There's even like a little girl there with her mom, and they're like, ooh, and everyone's screaming, and they call her a monster, and they're like, shoot her, like they're like just it's like Frankenstein, the crowd with Frankenstein just trying to kill her, and some guy just like pushes her, and they keep like pushing her back and forth, and they keep calling her a freak, and she's on stage on her back like crying, and some guy bashes her head in, and blood just like pops all over him, and a new head grows back on her, and her hand breaks off and blows and sprays everywhere, like Japanese style, like Kurosawa style, like this blood spurting everywhere. And then she kind of just takes over, and she does like a Carrie sort of thing, the way Carrie just took over the prom with her, uh, mind control and stuff like that. She just has like this orgasm of blood, like this bloodgasm, and just like blows up the whole place with blood. And it's a pretty cathartic scene, I would say. And I like the dissolving of the scene, like as she shoots out the blood and it dissolves, and we see her go down the hallway shooting out all this blood. And they're the monster, their hybrid monster. They walk outside, and they just kind of break down in the street, and Demi, like you see like Demi's face like alive in there somewhere, and you're just like, okay, what the hell's going on? Like you kind of expect her whole body to come out of it, but it's not her whole body. It's just her face, and her face is just like crawling on the ground, and it's very like Basket Case ish. I know you
With
love that movie. Um, Frank Henenlot or whatever the hell his name is. Yeah, and we
yes,
just see her face just crawling, and then she crawls to her Hollywood star, and just kind of rests there and looks up at the sky. Glitter starts to fall on her, and it's like the spotlight is on her, one final time. It's like she gets this last standing ovation of her career, of her life, before she just like liquefies there, and then all of a sudden, like not long after that, just this like street cleaner car drives by and just wipes her off the planet. You know what I'm saying? She's done. Like she doesn't exist anymore. There's nothing of her anymore.
yep.
Just her star. And then that's like pretty much the end of the movie. It's pretty graphic, pretty bloody, pretty over the top, but necessary. I guess I feel like we haven't seen a real body horror film like that in a while. Um, or what are your final takes from the movie?
Profound.
Very
Uh,
profound, right?
yeah, Hollywood's a cruel mistress, cruel bitch. One day you're hot, and the next day you're getting cleaned up by the street cleaner. It's And a lot of people commit their lives to becoming actors, writers, and directors. And she gave everything for that. She gave everything to be whatever it was she was there. Like, she got addicted to it. She wanted that fame. She wanted that popularity. She wanted to stay young. She wanted to stay that star. And I think kind of, yeah, I don't know. Don't you get that feeling like it's a slap in the face to Hollywood, and just that kind of atmosphere of having to be new and having to be young and being replaced, and no, I don't know.
Yeah,
Never
no, no,
mind.
no, yeah, no, yeah.
You
I
can
was just
edit this
letting you.
part.
No, no, I totally agree with you. I was just letting you talk there. I just wanted to hear what you had to say. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think that's a great. I mean, I'm glad you're bringing that up because I feel like that gets kind of lost amongst people who like the movie. Like, I don't hear them saying that a lot. I just hear them saying, "Oh, it's body horror, it's bloody, it's Margaret Qualley's hot and stuff." You know, I'm saying like that's all I'm hearing. I'm not hearing about what you're saying, which you're right. You know, and it's kind of funny that she didn't win the Oscar for this when she won the Golden Globe. So people were thinking, oh, Demi, she might win an Oscar for this. You know, it's like no better time than now because I don't know if she'll have another part that, you know, is this great, you know, that'll get her, you know, award buzz, you know. So people were kind of expecting her to win the Oscar, and then, you know, at the 11th hour, the rug got pulled under her, and it's this Mikey Madison who wins from Honora. But in a way, that is very symbolic and fitting and metaphoric because I was seeing this meme the other day and they were saying, like, oh, it's funny that Mikey Madison won this award over Demi because that's basically what the substance was about. Like, they were showing how Hollywood prefers the young, hot actress over the old hag. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying Demi's a hag. I'm just saying that's how the town looks at her. That's how the producers look at her. You know what I'm saying? Do you want do you want a young star or an over the hill one? You know what I'm saying? It just, even economically, it just makes more sense to have someone young. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Um, so it's just kind of fitting that she won. But, you know, that's what I see as like the metaphor of this. Like, as Mikey Madison ages, then she'll start to see like, oh shit, like I'm Demi now. You know what I'm saying? When she's 50, 60, she's gonna be like, shit, now I don't get parts. You know what I'm saying? Now they're gonna award some 20-year-old chick who's hot. You know what I'm saying? And she'll see what it's like to be this Elizabeth Sparkle character, you know, down the line when nobody cares about her anymore. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of, it's cool to see that come to life in real life. You know what I'm saying? Like, we get to see this act out in real life. So that'll be interesting to see as Mikey Madison ages. You know, she might be like, shit, like now I'm Demi. You know what I'm saying? And it's rare when you see movies extend out of real life, you know, out from a movie into real life. You know, another movie that I feel like did that was Eyes Wide Shut from Kubrick. You know, it's kind of fitting that she has these Kubrick references in this movie, and to me, Kubrick did that with Eyes Wide Shut because it was like he had a real couple. He put them through a traumatic shooting, you know, of this film. You know, many takes, and you know, he asked them a lot of questions about their personal life that, you know, he kind of put into the script and stuff. And at the end of the day, their marriage didn't survive that film. You know, like I think part of them divorcing was doing that film. You know, so
Mm.
you know, I think it's kind of cool when actually, like, you know, the movie can extend into real life. Like, there's another layer, you know, maybe horror, I guess you could say. There's another layer of horror to it when it actually kicks into your real life, you know. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that whole thing, you know, because it's true that that is what they're trying to say with this movie. And, you know, they're kind of biting the hand that feeds them, but that's good. I love when artists do that, you know. And it's even better when people are too dumb to realize it. You know, like the town is too dumb to realize it, and they just want to award you and give you your gift bag and shit, and and make everything for show. But yeah, that is the dark side of Hollywood. Any other words for this film, Kris?
Dennis Quaid was amazing. I think he did a fantastic job. Got snubbed, I think he should have gotten some kind of nomination somewhere. Biggest asshole prick
Hey, best
Hollywood
supporting.
producer. Fantastic.
He did a
Yeah,
good
I don't know.
job
Do you
as that.
think they'll make a sequel from this? You think like there's so many things that are like, what the hell is going on here? Who are the people that giving this stuff to them, and what's their purpose, and why is this going on? Like, there's like a whole bunch of questions. I don't know if they left that ambiguous because they're like, oh, we can make more after this, or if it was just, I don't know. But what would what do you think? Do you think they'll make a sequel from this, or do you think it's just like, this
I
is
kind of
great, it's amazing, let's stop?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking they would because I think they're like, okay, this one is good. Let's not beat a dead horse. Um, but you're right. There are a lot of unanswered questions that they could make some interesting prequel out of. Like Substance, the beginning. Like the Purge, the first Purge or whatever. Like about the first substance or something. You know what I'm saying? Like they could do something like that. Like that could be interesting. Yeah, because you're right. There are a lot of unanswered questions, but I mean that could just be, they want to leave that a mystery to you. Yeah, we'll see. I don't think so. I think, I think. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't see it happening. Cronenberg never did any sequels. Well, I mean, they did The Fly, but he didn't direct that.
Yeah, that wasn't his
But yeah,
fault.
we'll see. Um, Thanks for joining me, Kris. It
Likewise.
was nice to talk horror with you. Let's do it again sometime. Let's
Always a
talk some
pleasure.
more horror
Yes, sir.
on the next Briterion. All right. Thanks for listening. Have a great night. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.